Infidelity isn't a fall. It's hundreds of small slips. And I had taken too many steps before I realized I was already falling. My name is Nathan, 36, a mid-level project manager at a tech company in Manhattan. On paper, I'm living the so-called adult success story. Steady job, beautiful wife, neat apartment, no debt. People say I'm lucky. I just smile and never argue. Every morning at 7:25, I take the F line, always standing in car 4, by the left door where the crowd is thinner. I drink the same coffee, sit at the same desk, and tackle the first email in my priority queue. Some days I finish early, but instead of relief, I feel this dull emptiness. I just think, so that's it? It started feeling like I was watching an old tape of my life on loop, star me, but I'd forgotten the script. I still laugh with co-workers, still get good feedback in meetings, still nod when someone says, "You're really efficient," but inside, everything feels hollow. Lately, I've been forgetting things, not meetings or deadlines, but things like why I fell in love with Allison in the first place. Or the last time I laughed, genuinely. What I thought were the foundation pieces now blur like an overexposed photograph. And some mornings, staring into the bathroom mirror, I'm not even sure who's looking back. It's not that I've changed too much. It's that there's no feeling left in that gaze. No curiosity. No hope. Just a kind of subtle exhaustion. From doing the same things, saying the same words, pretending the same beliefs, when I no longer feel any of it is true. Allison, my wife, is a kind woman. We've never yelled, never betrayed each other, but we haven't shared anything real for at least a year. She still asks, "How was your day?" I reply, "Fine," and we leave it there. Not because we've stopped caring, but because we're both afraid that saying the truth out loud might collapse the fragile peace held together by silence. I've tried to talk to her. A few times I started to, but whenever her eyes met mine, tired, busy, anxious, I swallowed the words. Maybe I was scared that being honest would force us to admit how far we've drifted unnoticed. I've started waking up at night, not from nightmares, but from an emptiness so intense it makes my heart race. There's no clear reason, just a sense that I'm a glass with a cracked bottom, unsure when it started leaking, but certain it's emptying. I've lost interest in the things I used to love. Photography, hiking, jazz. Now I just open Spotify, pick the lo-fi chill for focus playlist, and let it play like background noise in a day without meaning. I avoid friends, not because I dislike them, but because I'm afraid they'll see something in me that I can't define. I haven't told anyone about this. As a man, I was taught that quiet endurance is maturity. That mental strain is something to hide, like a scratch on a new car. Not serious, but embarrassing to let others notice. But I can feel it. Something is slipping. Not with a crash, but in tiny daily lines. A sigh when no one's around, impatience toward what I once cherished, and finally, not caring if tomorrow looks exactly like today. I met Ava on a Monday morning in the conference room on the 14th floor. She was 2 minutes late, her light brown trench coat still dotted with rain, her breath slightly hurried. I remember I was annotating the project plan when she walked in, quiet, efficient, and took the seat directly across from me. When I looked up, our eyes met. After that day, I started noticing her. Not intentionally, or at least I told myself that. I just checked to see if she was already in the room when I walked in, listened more closely when she spoke, talked a little more when she was present. I found myself wanting to be seen by her, and that unsettled me. I went home carrying a strange feeling, a small flicker of joy, like someone had gently stirred the stagnant water inside me. My wife was on the couch, asking if I was tired. I said, just the usual, but the truth was, I felt light. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the familiar heaviness pressing down when I stepped through the door. And that's exactly when I began to feel afraid. I shifted under the blanket, trying to find a position that might smother the feelings that had just started to surface. But the more I tried to silence them, the more they glowed, not into flame, but into a soft, warm light I couldn't name. The next morning, Ava stood beside me at the coffee machine. It was the first time we ever spoke alone. "You like double espresso?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just a habit." "Me too, but I drink it to feel awake." "What about you?" I replied, to feel like there's still something familiar left in me. The words came out faster than I meant. She paused slightly, then nodded without pushing further. That was it. But my heart beat faster than usual, as if even my body was surprised by how honest I'd just been with someone who was still a stranger. There was no thunderbolt, no romantic music in my head, just a flicker of awareness, like I stepped through a door I didn't even know I had opened. She smiled, polite, measured, but to me in that moment, it felt like life was nodding back at me. "I'm still here, Nathan. You're still capable of feeling." That evening, she messaged me on Slack. "You look tense this afternoon. Everything okay?" I read that message 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I couldn't remember the last time someone had asked me that, and truly meant it. I didn't respond right away. I picked up my phone, put it down, picked it up again. 1,000 voices ran through my head. "Don't be stupid. You're just tired. A little kindness doesn't mean anything." And then I replied, "Probably just a deadline, but thank you for noticing." Just one sentence. But inside me, a door quietly opened. From that day forward, I looked forward to seeing Ava each morning. I adjusted my tie, wore a bit more cologne. I felt like a 17-year-old kid again, foolish, awkward, but fully alive. And the frightening part was, I liked it. I craved being noticed, being asked, being seen. And Ava did all of that with the smallest gestures. At the same time, I knew I was stepping into something unsafe. The guilt began to gnaw. I haven't done anything wrong, but am I hiding something from my wife? I haven't touched Ava, but am I touching something in her? Can I even trust myself anymore? I found myself standing in a gray zone, where I didn't dare name what was growing between us, because once it had a name, I'd lose the last excuse I had to deny it. That night, it rained. Not heavy, just a steady, lingering drizzle, the kind that makes people hesitate to go home. The office was mostly dark, just a few lights still on, the long hallway reflecting the water streaking down the windows. I stayed late to finish a report. It wasn't necessary, honestly. I just knew Ava was staying late, too. At 8:42 p.m., she walked into my office holding 2 cold cans of beer. "I know I probably shouldn't, but you weren't planning on going home early either, were you?" she said. I smiled, half-hearted. She set the beer on my desk and sat across from me. No safe distance like usual. No project questions to shield us. There was a silence. The sound of rain tapping against the glass filled the room. "You're not wearing your wedding ring today," she said. "Oh, right. Forgot," I answered. "It's okay," Ava said, taking a sip of beer. "I used to be married, too." "Really?" I asked. "Divorced now," she said. "You know, people rarely notice the exact moment love dies. It doesn't explode. It just stops breathing." I didn't know how to respond. I just sat there, listening to the sound of my heart pounding. That sentence. It just stops breathing. Cut through me. I knew exactly what that felt like. And for the first time, I felt understood without needing to explain, without needing to defend myself. Ava stood and walked over. She sat beside me, close enough for me to catch the faint scent of mint on her wrist. "Nathan," she said, slow and deliberate, "I don't think you're the kind of man who does something wrong. I think you're just too lonely to do what's right." I didn't respond. I just looked into her eyes. No blame, no seduction, just truth. Raw, soft truth. And I let go. There were no words after that. No last-minute regrets playing in my head. No dramatic stop before it's too late moment like in the movies. Just the warmth of a stranger, and the strange sense that I had found a piece of myself I thought had long died. I left Ava's apartment just before 6 a.m. The city hadn't woken yet. I walked down the avenue, the rain still damp on the pavement. Every step echoed in my mind like a hollow drumbeat. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt adrift, like someone who had slipped off a cliff and wasn't sure whether to try climbing back or just let the fall finish. I opened the front door. Allison was sitting at the kitchen table, wearing an old beige sweater, a cup of tea in her hand. She didn't ask where I'd been. She just looked at me for a long time, then said, "I don't know what happened, but I know you're not here with me anymore." I stood frozen, throat tight. Maybe that was the moment everything inside me broke. Not because I got caught, but because I realized I had lost the one thing that anchored me to who I thought I was, the belief that I was a good man. The next day, I watched Ava from a distance during a meeting. She was calm, professional, still fully herself. But me, I felt like a background character in someone else's story. A man who touched something sacred with dust-covered hands and left a stain he couldn't wash off. I didn't message Ava. I didn't say anything to Allison. I kept going, like a guilty man without the courage to ask for forgiveness. I went to work, answered emails, sat in meetings, but I wasn't really there anymore. I used to think all I needed was a little emotion to come alive again. But emotion, it turns out, is like fire. If you don't control it, it won't warm you. It will burn everything down. I used to think guilt would hit like a wave, sudden, violent, enough to knock me over. But in reality, it was more like fog, thickening day by day, slowly blurring everything I once believed was certain. It didn't make me cry. It just took away my ability to look in the mirror without hating who I'd become. Each morning, I still woke at 6:30, made coffee, and dressed in the same shirts and khakis I'd worn to work for the last 8 years. But now, when I looked at the man in the mirror, eyes sunken from sleepless nights, hair slightly tangled from tossing and turning, I no longer saw someone okay. I saw a man who knew he was wrong, but didn't know where to begin making it right. I didn't deny it. I didn't make excuses. I remembered every brush of skin, every glance Ava gave me on those late nights at the office. I remembered the way my heart felt dipped in warm water, not burning, but just warm enough to remind me I wasn't entirely numb. Allison knew nothing. Everything looked the same. She still kissed me on the cheek before I left, still texted me, "Don't forget the milk." "What do you want for dinner?" She still smiled, still turned away in her sleep, just like every other night. The more she loved me, the more I felt like someone worth leaving. That night, I was ready to speak. Not everything. I wasn't going to confess the details, but I wanted to say I had slipped across a line, that I wasn't sure anymore if I was a good husband she believed I was. A week later, I stood at Ava's door. No warning, no excuse. I had made my choice before I ever got there. Not Ava, not a new love. I chose to walk away from the old life because I no longer believed I was good enough to return to it. She opened the door and looked at me for a long moment. Didn't ask why I came or how long I planned to stay. She simply stepped aside and let me in. I sat on the sofa. Ava didn't smile, didn't hug me. She poured a drink, handed it to me, and sat across from me. After a while, she asked, "Are you sure?" I shook my head. "No. But do you believe in someone who's lost himself trying to find a way back?" She didn't answer. We drank, and I knew, right then, I had gone too far to return. I wasn't staying for love. I was staying because I couldn't bear the weight of being forgiven. I returned home the next morning, packed in silence. Allison didn't ask why. She didn't cry. She just looked at me for a long time, then said, "I guess, in the end, you chose not to be the good man after all." I said nothing. Because I knew she was right. I waited for her to finish showering, dry her hair, and sit on the sofa with a book. She never got past page 20. I sat across from her, gathering all my courage. My hands were shaking. "Allie," I said softly, my voice dry as paper. She looked up. Her brown eyes were still the same, gentle, unsuspecting. Then, as if sensing my hesitation, she closed the book and placed her hand gently on my knee. "Is something wrong?" That was the moment, the opening. But then, without a word, she rested her head on my shoulder. Just that, nothing else. Just a kind of small, habitual gesture long time couples no longer think twice about. And I broke. I couldn't speak. I felt myself curl inward like a child about to be caught. Not from fear of being rejected, but because I couldn't bear to see that look in her eyes shatter. Because of me, I had betrayed her. But the pain I imagined on her face was what I truly couldn't survive. So I sat there, swallowed it all down. I let cowardice win and called it kindness. A week later, I stood in front of Ava's apartment door. I hadn't told her I was coming. I didn't have a reason to give if she asked. But I had already made my decision before I ever arrived. It wasn't about Ava. It wasn't about new love. I was walking away from a life I no longer believed I deserved to return to. She opened the door and looked at me for a long moment. She didn't ask why I was there or how long I intended to stay. She simply stepped aside and quietly motioned for me to come in. I sat on the couch. Ava didn't smile. She didn't reach for me. She poured a drink, handed it over, then sat down across from me without a word. After a moment, she asked, "Are you sure?" I shook my head. "No, but do you believe in someone who's lost himself and is trying to find his way back?" She didn't answer. We just drank, and I realized in that quiet, I had already crossed a line that made returning impossible. I wasn't staying because of love. I was staying because I couldn't carry the weight of being forgiven. I went home the next morning. I packed in silence. Allison didn't ask why. She didn't cry. She just looked at me for a long time and said, "I guess, in the end, you chose not to be the good man anymore." I didn't say anything, not because I didn't have words, but because none of them would have mattered. I knew she was right, and that was the part that hurt the most. It was a gray October Saturday afternoon. The wind swept fallen leaves from the sidewalk into the front yard. Nathan had just finished making his coffee when the doorbell rang. Not urgent, not loud, but just enough to freeze something in his chest. Allison was folding laundry in the living room. She looked up and asked, "Can you get that?" Nathan opened the door, and time stopped. Standing there was Ava, her hair down, a long coat draped over a frame, and a black leather crossbody bag. Her eyes held nothing soft anymore, just a cold, precise calm. "Hello, Allison," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I'm Ava. I think you deserve to know me. I'm the woman who slept with your husband." Nathan stood frozen. Allison spun around. The room didn't explode with sound, but with silence, the kind that lands like a blade. It hit through her eyes that had just taken a blow to the heart no one can brace for. Ava reached into her bag and pulled out a small stack of printed photos, snapshots taken on her phone. Nathan and Ava at a bar. Nathan's hand around her waist in a hotel hallway. A selfie, his smile unmistakable, his eyes carrying a warmth Allison hadn't seen in a long time. She didn't scream. Her hand just trembled as she turned toward him. "Is this the thing you didn't have the courage to tell me?" Nathan tried to step forward, tried to say something, but his voice collapsed in his throat like shards of metal. "I'm sorry." Ava laughed, dry and sharp, without even a hint of joy. "Really, Nathan? You thought you could have it all? A beautiful wife, a polished career, and just a little secret comfort on the side for me." She narrowed her eyes. "You're not tragic. You're just ordinary." Nathan looked at her like a man losing his footing on the edge of a cliff. "Why are you doing this? You said you understood me." "I do." Ava replied. That's exactly why I wanted her to see who you really are. Allison turned and started walking upstairs without another word. The staircase suddenly seemed twice as long in the silence. Each step echoed in Nathan's chest like nails sealing the coffin of the marriage he had just buried with his own hands. 2 weeks later, Nathan was let go from his job. The rumor had spread fast. The affair between a manager and an employee had reached upper management. The company didn't want scandal. The cleanest solution was to ask him to leave with dignity. A beautiful phrase for a dismissal without mercy. Nathan packed his things. No one said goodbye. No one looked him in the eye. They all knew. Allison sent him an email, short, without anger or blame. The divorce papers are ready for your signature. I don't hate you, but I can't live with someone I no longer recognize. Nathan signed. His hand trembled, not from rage, but because even now, he still couldn't bring himself to blame anyone but himself. Nathan sat in the temporary apartment he had rented, a small, bare studio with cold white walls that felt as empty as he did. Each morning, he woke without an alarm. No one called. No one waited. There was no reason to rise, but he rose anyway. He didn't cry, didn't scream. He simply unlocked his phone and scrolled through old photos of Allison, one of her smiling, tilting her head for a selfie in their kitchen, another of them embracing in Vermont, moments that had once felt so real. Now like dreams he couldn't remember waking up from. He reread Ava's final message. We're just roles in each other's lives. Yours is over. Nathan smiled, a soundless, hollow smile. Then he looked in the mirror, and for the first time, he saw no one there at all. This story isn't just a tragedy about a broken relationship. It's a mirror reflecting the quiet descent that happens when someone loses connection with themselves. Nathan didn't betray his wife because he stopped loving her, nor because he fell in love with someone else. He betrayed her because he believed he had gone numb, trapped in a life too stable, too repetitive, and in his desperation to feel alive again, he lost sight of everything else. But being alive isn't about chasing impulse. It's about taking responsibility for the choices we've made, the people who still believe in us, and the person we once hoped to become. And sometimes, the most painful loss isn't losing someone else. It's waking up one day and realizing you no longer deserve the person you used to be. When you lose yourself chasing fleeting emotions, the cost isn't just losing someone else. It's losing the right to return to the person you once were. If you found this content meaningful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any upcoming stories. Feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings. Once again, thank you for being here. See you in the next video.